Adrian Blake's hands went cold the moment Elena Ward leaned close in the crowded hallway and whispered, "I'm pregnant." Around them, executives buzzed past with coffee cups and quarterly reports, oblivious. But Adrian heard nothing except the roar in his ears. His daughter Mia was barely 7. His ex-wife had been gone 3 years. He'd rebuilt everything from scratch: routine, stability, trust. And now this. One night, one mistake. And Elena, the woman he barely knew outside conference rooms, was carrying his child. Within minutes, a passing VP would overhear the fallout. By lunch, the entire office would know. His carefully controlled life was about to shatter in front of everyone. If you want to see how far a single choice can unravel or rebuild a man's entire world, stay with me until the end. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from and hit that like button. Let me see how far this story travels. Adrian Blake had exactly 14 minutes before his 9 a.m. strategy meeting, and he'd already burned 3 of them staring at the elevator panel like it held answers. Floor 12, Finance. He didn't belong here. He worked 2 floors down in operations, where problems had solutions and timelines had deadlines. Predictable, manageable. But this morning, Elena Ward had sent him a message that said only, 12th floor, hallway by the east stairwell, 850. Please. Please. Elena didn't say please. Elena gave presentations that made senior directors sweat. She asked questions that peeled apart bad logic like overripe fruit. In 3 years at Carter and Lee Consulting, she'd never once asked Adrian for anything. They worked in adjacent departments, attended the same all-hands meetings, exchanged polite nods in the break room. That was it. Until 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago, there'd been a client celebration dinner. Too much wine. A conversation that lasted until the restaurant closed. A cab they'd shared because her apartment was on his way home. Except it wasn't on his way home. He'd known that. She'd known that. And when she'd leaned across the back seat and kissed him, he hadn't stopped her. He should have. The elevator chimed. 12th floor. The doors slid open and Adrian stepped into a hallway that smelled like fresh paint and corporate ambition. 20 feet away, Elena stood near the stairwell door, arms crossed, face unreadable. She wore a gray blazer, her dark hair pulled back tight, nothing in her posture suggesting panic or urgency. But her eyes had the same look Mia got when she was trying not to cry. Adrian's stomach dropped. "Thanks for coming," Elena said quietly as he approached. Around them, people drifted past, analysts clutching tablets, assistants balancing lattes, a senior partner laughing too loud into his phone. Normal. Everything looked normal. "What's going on?" Adrian kept his voice low. "Your message. Not here." Elena glanced past his shoulder, then gestured toward the stairwell. "Just 2 minutes, please." There it was again. "Please." They stepped into the stairwell, and the door clicked shut behind them, cutting off the hallway noise. Concrete walls, fluorescent lights, the faint smell of industrial cleaner. Elena turned to face him, and for a long moment, she just stood there, breathing carefully, like she was working up to something. "I'm pregnant," she said. The words hung in the air between them, flat and final. Adrian felt the ground tilt. "What?" "I'm pregnant." Her voice stayed even, controlled, but her hands tightened where they gripped her elbows. "I took 3 tests. Saw a doctor yesterday. 8 weeks." 8 weeks. Adrian did the math automatically. The dinner, the cab, the morning after, when he'd left her apartment before dawn and driven home in silence, already regretting it. Not because of her, because of everything. Because he had a daughter who needed stability. Because his ex-wife had walked out citing his obsessive need for control. And he'd spent 3 years proving he could give Mia the structure she deserved. Because one-night mistakes weren't part of the plan. And now this. "You're sure?" The question sounded stupid even as he said it. Elena's jaw tightened. "Yes, Adrian, I'm sure." "I didn't mean..." He stopped, dragged a hand through his hair. This is unexpected, I know." She exhaled slowly. "I didn't plan this either, but I needed you to know. Before..." She trailed off, eyes flicking toward the stairwell door. Before what? Before the office found out? Before she made a decision? Adrian's mind raced, trying to find footing. What do you want to do? I'm keeping it. No hesitation. I know I'm not asking you to. She broke off, shook her head. I just thought you should know. That's all. You don't have to, don't have to what? Adrian's voice came out sharper than he meant. Be involved? Pretend it's not happening. I'm giving you an out. Elena's composure cracked just slightly, something raw flashing across her face. You have a daughter, a whole life. I'm not going to blow that up because we made a mistake. A mistake? Adrian repeated the word, tasting it. That's what this was, wasn't it? A mistake. One night, one choice. But the word felt too small for what was sitting between them now. You think I'm the kind of man who walks away? I think you're the kind of man who builds spreadsheets for his daughter's bedtime routine. Elena's tone softened, almost gentle. I've seen you at the office, Adrian. You're the guy who color codes his calendar, who leaves at 5:30 sharp every day to pick up Mia. You don't do chaos. She wasn't wrong. After the divorce, Adrian had rebuilt his life on structure. Mornings meant oatmeal and math flashcards. Evenings meant homework, dinner, bedtime stories from the same worn copy of Charlotte's Web Mia insisted on hearing over and over. Weekends meant soccer practice and grocery runs and Sunday pancakes. No surprises. No variables. It was the only way he knew how to be a good father. And now there was this. I need time, he said finally, to think, to figure out. Of course. Elena nodded quickly, already stepping back. Take whatever time you need. I wanted to tell you in person. Before anyone else, the stairwell door swung open. They both froze. Paul Cartwright stood in the doorway, one hand still on the handle, his expression shifting from mild surprise to sharp curiosity in half a second. Senior VP Finance. The kind of man who collected office gossip like stock options and wielded it just as strategically. Adrian. Paul's smile didn't reach his eyes. Didn't expect to see you up here. Elena. He nodded to her, gaze sliding between them with the precision of someone cataloging details. Everything all right? Fine. Elena's voice reset to boardroom smooth. Just catching up. In the stairwell, Paul raised an eyebrow. Interesting choice. Adrian felt his jaw tighten. We were just finishing up. Right. Paul's smile widened. Well, don't let me interrupt. Elena, I'll see you in the 10 o'clock, yeah? He stepped past them, heading down the stairs, but not before throwing one more look over his shoulder, the kind of look that said he'd just filed this moment away for later use. The door swung shut. Elena closed her eyes briefly. Damn it. He doesn't know anything, Adrian said, but the words felt hollow. Paul Cartwright didn't need to know. He just needed to suspect, and suspicion was enough. This was Carter and Lee. Rumors moved faster than emails. I have to go. Elena straightened her blazer, her mask sliding back into place. I've got that presentation at 10. Just think about what I said, okay? You don't owe me anything. She left before he could answer. Adrian stood alone in the stairwell, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and felt the first crack split through the life he'd so carefully constructed. By noon, the whispers had started. Adrian didn't hear them directly. He wasn't supposed to, but he caught the way conversations paused when he walked past the break room, saw the glances exchanged between assistants near the copier, felt the shift in the air, the way people looked at him just a beat too long before looking away. He made it through his strategy meeting on autopilot, nodding at the right moments, scribbling notes he wouldn't remember. When it ended, he escaped to his office and closed the door. His phone buzzed. A text from Diane, his ex-wife. Picking Mia up from school today. Dentist appointment. I'll drop her off at 6. Right. The dentist. He'd forgotten. Adrian added it to his calendar, color-coded green for Mia-related events, and stared at the screen. Mia. 7 years old, gap-toothed smile. Obsessed with dinosaurs and knock-knock jokes that made no sense. She was his center, his reason for every decision. How was he supposed to tell her she was going to have a sibling? His office door opened without a knock. Paul Cartwright stepped inside, closing it behind him with a soft click. Got a minute? No. What do you need, Paul? Paul settled into the chair across from Adrian's desk, crossing one leg over the other like he had all the time in the world. Just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. I'm fine. Good, good. Paul's fingers drummed against his knee. It's just, I noticed you and Elena Ward seemed a little intense this morning, in the stairwell. Adrian kept his expression neutral. We were talking. Right, talking. Paul leaned forward slightly. Look, Adrian, I'm not trying to pry, but you know how it is around here. People talk. And if there's something going on, something that might affect team dynamics or create complications, it's better to get ahead of it. There's nothing to get ahead of. Really? Paul's smile sharpened. But? 'Cause from where I was standing, it looked like Elena was delivering some pretty heavy news, and you looked like a man who just got hit by a truck. Adrian's hands tightened on the armrests. My personal life is my business. Absolutely. Until it becomes the company's business. Paul stood, adjusting his tie. I'm just saying, be careful. Elena's ambitious, smart, but she's also the kind of woman who knows how to leverage a situation. If you're not careful, you could end up on the wrong side of a very messy situation. The insinuation landed like a slap. Get out of my office, Adrian said quietly. Paul raised both hands in mock surrender. Just trying to help, buddy, but suit yourself. He turned toward the door, paused. Oh, and Adrian, if HR gets involved, just remember, I tried to warn you. He left. Adrian sat frozen, rage and fear tangling in his chest. Leverage a situation. The implication was clear. Paul thought Elena was using the pregnancy to trap him, to gain something, and worse, he was already planting that narrative with anyone who'd listen. Adrian grabbed his phone and typed a message to Elena. We need to talk. Tonight. After work. Her reply came 2 minutes later. Okay, coffee shop on 5th, 6:30. I'll be there. The coffee shop was one of those aggressively neutral places designed to look artisanal. Exposed brick, mismatched furniture, a chalkboard menu listing drinks with names like Velvet Thunder and Chai Uprising. Adrian arrived first, claimed a corner table, and ordered a black coffee he didn't want. Elena walked in at 6:35, scanning the room until she spotted him. She looked tired. The blazer was gone, replaced by a plain sweater, and her hair was down, falling loose around her shoulders. She looked younger, more vulnerable. She ordered tea and joined him at the table, wrapping both hands around the cup like she needed the warmth. Paul Cartwright came to my office today, Adrian said without preamble. Elena's eyes closed briefly. What did he say? That I should be careful. That you might be leveraging the situation. Adrian watched her face. Are you? Excuse me? Her head snapped up, eyes blazing. You think I got pregnant on purpose to… What, trap you? Advance my career? No, I don't think that. Adrian kept his voice level. But Paul does. And if he's saying it to me, he's saying it to other people. Elena set her cup down hard enough that tea sloshed over the rim. Paul Cartwright is a snake. He's been gunning for my promotion since I turned down his dinner invitation last year. This has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me now. Adrian leaned forward. Elena, I'm not asking you to defend yourself. I'm telling you what's happening. The rumors are already starting. And if we don't get ahead of this, if we don't figure out what we're doing, it's going to tear both of us apart. What we're doing? Elena's laugh was sharp, bitter. Adrian, there is no we. I told you this morning, you don't have to be involved. I can handle this on my own. And I told you I'm not the kind of man who walks away. Why? The question came out raw, almost desperate. Why would you tie yourself to this? You have a daughter, a life that works. I'm offering you a way out. Because it's my responsibility. Even as Adrian said it, he knew the words were wrong, too cold, too much like a spreadsheet. He tried again. Because I don't want Mia growing up thinking her father is the kind of man who abandons his kids. Elena stared at him for a long moment. So this is about Mia, not about me, not about the baby, about what kind of example you want to set. That's not… Adrian stopped. Was it? Was that all this was? He didn't know anymore. 6 hours ago, his life had made sense. Now he was sitting across from a woman he barely knew, talking about a baby that felt more like a concept than a reality, trying to figure out how to do the right thing when he couldn't even define what that meant. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted finally. "I don't know how to be a father to 2 kids. I barely figured out how to be a father to one. But walking away, pretending this isn't happening, that's not an option." Elena's expression softened, just slightly. "You're a good dad, Adrian. I've seen you with Mia. The way you light up when you talk about her. The way you leave work the second it's pickup time. You don't give yourself enough credit. Then let me try to give this kid the same thing." Adrian met her eyes. "I'm not asking to be your partner. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to be involved. Doctor's appointments, decisions, whatever you need." "And what about the office?" Elena's voice dropped. "Paul's already circling. If we give him ammunition, if we're seen together, if people think there's something between us, he'll use it. Let him try." Adrian felt something harden in his chest. "I'm done caring what Paul Cartwright thinks." Elena studied him, searching his face for something. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, we do this together, but we keep it professional. No drama, no complications." Agreed. They shook hands across the table, a formal gesture that felt absurd given the circumstances. But it was something, a start. Adrian left the coffee shop feeling like he'd just signed a contract he didn't fully understand. But as he drove home to pick up Mia from Diane's, one thought kept circling. He'd made a choice, and for better or worse, there was no going back. Well, Mia was waiting on Diane's front porch when Adrian pulled up, her dinosaur backpack slung over one shoulder, her gap-toothed grin wide and unguarded. "Daddy!" She barreled down the steps and launched herself at him, all 70 pounds of uncontrolled enthusiasm. Adrian caught her, lifted her up, felt the knot in his chest loosen just slightly. This was what mattered. "Hey, kiddo, how was the dentist?" "Boring, but I didn't get any cavities, so Mom says I can have ice cream." Mia twisted to look back at the house, where Diane stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Can we get ice cream, Dad? Please?" "Sure." Adrian set her down, glanced at Diane. "Thanks for taking her." Diane's expression was unreadable. "No problem." She hesitated, then added, "You look stressed. Everything okay?" "Fine." The lie came automatically. "Just work stuff." "Right." Diane didn't push, but her eyes lingered on him a beat too long. She knew him too well. Knew when he was holding something back. But she didn't ask, and he didn't offer. And after a moment, she just nodded. "Have a good night." "You too." Adrian and Mia drove to the ice cream place 3 blocks from their apartment, where Mia ordered a waffle cone with 2 scoops of mint chip and extra gummy bears, and Adrian got a single scoop of vanilla he didn't taste. They sat at a sticky table by the window, and Mia talked non-stop about her day, about how her friend Emma brought a hamster to show and tell, and how her teacher said her drawing of a T-Rex was very anatomically creative, and how she'd lost another tooth, but the tooth fairy hadn't come yet because she'd swallowed it by accident. Adrian listened, nodding in the right places, but his mind kept drifting. How was he supposed to tell her? "Hey, Mia, guess what? You're going to have a little brother or sister." "No, I'm not getting back together with your mom." "Yes, it's complicated." "Dad?" Mia's voice cut through his thoughts. "You're doing the stare thing again." "What stare thing?" "The thing where you look at me, but you're not actually looking at me. You're thinking about boring grown-up stuff." She licked a drip of melted ice cream off her wrist. "Are you in trouble?" "No, sweetie, I'm not in trouble." "Then why do you look worried?" Adrian set down his spoon. Mia was 7, but she was sharp, observant. She'd inherited that from Diane. "I'm just trying to figure some things out, but it's nothing for you to worry about." "Is it about work?" "Sort of." Mia considered this, swirling her spoon through the gummy bears. "Mom says you work too much. She says you need to have fun sometimes." "Your mom says a lot of things." "She's not wrong, though." Mia grinned, rainbow-colored teeth and all. "You should get a hobby, like sword fighting or dragon training." "I'll add it to the list." They finished their ice cream, and Adrian drove them home, where Mia immediately dumped her backpack in the entryway and raced to her room to build what she called a dinosaur empire out of Legos. Adrian cleaned up the kitchen, started a load of laundry, checked his calendar for tomorrow's meetings. Normal. Routine. But nothing felt normal anymore. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. First OB appointment is next Thursday, 10 a.m. If you still want to come. Adrian stared at the message. Next Thursday. He had a budget review at 9:30. He could move it, reschedule, make it work. He typed back, I'll be there. Her reply was immediate. Thank you. 2 words, but they felt heavier than they should. Adrian set the phone down and walked to Mia's room, where she was narrating an elaborate battle between a Triceratops and a Stegosaurus. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her, and tried to imagine this chaos, this noise, this beautiful mess, times 2. He couldn't, but he was going to have to figure it out. The next morning, Adrian arrived at the office early, hoping to avoid the hallway gossip. It didn't work. The moment he stepped off the elevator, he felt it, the shift in energy. People glanced at him, then quickly away. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Someone near the break room whispered something he couldn't hear, and another person laughed, sharp and knowing. Adrian ignored it, walked to his office, closed the door. At 9:15, his desk phone rang. Adrian Blake. Mr. Blake, this is Jennifer from HR. Do you have a moment to come down to my office? His stomach dropped. Now? If possible. I'll be right there. Adrian hung up, stared at the phone. HR. That was fast. He hadn't even done anything yet, and already the machinery was turning. He took the elevator down to the 3rd floor, where HR occupied a suite of bland, neutral rooms designed to make uncomfortable conversations feel slightly less terrible. Jennifer Moss met him at the door, mid-50s, graying hair, the kind of smile that gave nothing away. Thanks for coming down, Adrian. Have a seat. He sat. Jennifer closed the door, settled behind her desk, folded her hands. I'll get straight to the point. We've received some concerns about a potential workplace relationship that may violate company policy. A workplace relationship? Adrian kept his voice even. With who? Elena Ward. Jennifer's expression didn't change. Is there a relationship? No. But you are involved with her in some capacity. Adrian chose his words carefully. Elena and I are navigating a personal situation. It doesn't affect our work. What kind of personal situation? He wanted to tell her it was none of her business, that his private life was exactly that, private. But he knew how this worked. HR didn't ask questions they didn't already have answers to. Someone had talked. Paul, probably. Or someone Paul had talked to. She's pregnant, Adrian said finally. And yes, it's mine, but we're not in a relationship. We're handling it privately. Jennifer's pen moved across her notepad. I see. And when did this pregnancy occur? Does that matter? Company policy prohibits relationships between employees that create conflicts of interest or uncomfortable work environments. If this occurred while you were both employed here, it was one night. Adrian's voice hardened. 6 weeks ago. We're not dating. We're not involved. There's no conflict of interest. That's not for you to decide. Jennifer set her pen down. I'm going to need to speak with Ms. Ward as well. And depending on what she says, we may need to open a formal inquiry. An inquiry into what? We didn't break any rules. That remains to be seen. Jennifer stood, signaling the meeting was over. Thank you for your honesty, Adrian. I'll be in touch. Adrian left HR feeling like he'd just walked through a minefield. By the time he got back to his office, his phone was already buzzing. Elena. They called you too? He answered. Just got out. Her voice was tight. I told them the truth, that we're not involved, that this is personal. But Jennifer kept pushing, asking if you'd pressured me, if there was any coercion. Coercion? Adrian's grip tightened on the phone. This is Paul. He's feeding them a narrative. I know, and it's going to get worse. Elena exhaled slowly. Adrian, maybe you should step back. Let me handle this alone. If they think you're involved, if they start digging, no. The word came out hard, final. We're in this together. That's what we agreed. That was before HR got involved. I don't care. I'm not backing down. There was a long silence on the other end, then quietly, okay, but this is going to get ugly. Let it. They hung up, and Adrian sat at his desk, staring at the stack of reports he was supposed to review, the emails piling up in his inbox, the calendar reminders blinking on his screen. Everything looked the same, but nothing was. His whole life, he'd played by the rules, followed the plan, built the structure. And now, for the first time, he was stepping outside of it, into something messy and uncertain and completely beyond his control. He thought about Mia, about the baby, about Elena, standing alone in an HR office, defending herself against accusations she didn't deserve. And he made a decision. If they wanted a fight, he'd give them one. The formal inquiry letter arrived in Adrian's inbox 3 days later, buried between a vendor proposal and a meeting reminder. Subject line, RE, Workplace Conduct Investigation, required response. He opened it at his desk, read it twice, then forwarded it to Elena without comment. She called him 60 seconds later. "They're interviewing people," she said, no greeting. "My assistant just told me Jennifer pulled her into a conference room this morning. Asked about my schedule, my interactions with you, whether I seemed distressed lately." Adrian closed his office door. "What did she say?" "That I seem fine, normal. But Adrian, they're building a case. They're trying to find something that isn't there. Then there's nothing to find." He kept his voice steady, but his pulse was hammering. "We tell the truth. We cooperate. We let them waste their time. And if they don't believe us, then we deal with it." Adrian sat down, rubbed his temples. "The appointment's still on for Thursday, right?" Elena hesitated. "You're still coming." "I said I would. Even with all this happening?" "Especially with all this happening." Adrian glanced at his calendar, at the color-coded blocks that mapped out his entire week. "I'm not giving them a reason to say I'm not committed." "Committed?" Elena repeated the word slowly. "Is that what you are? Committed?" The question caught him off guard. "What else would I be?" "I don't know, Adrian. Obligated, trapped, doing damage control?" Her voice softened. "I need to know if you're here because you want to be or because you're too stubborn to admit this was a mistake." Adrian stared at the email on his screen, at the clinical language outlining the investigation process, the timelines, the potential outcomes. "I don't know how to answer that." "Then maybe you should figure it out." Elena hung up before he could respond. Adrian set the phone down and sat in the silence of his office, listening to the muffled sounds of the workday beyond his door. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing, someone laughing in the hallway. Normal sounds, but everything felt off-kilter, like the world had tilted just slightly, and he was the only one who noticed. His desk phone rang. Internal extension, Paul Cartwright. Adrian let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, his cell buzzed, a text from Paul. "Need to talk. It's important." Adrian deleted it. Another text. "I'm trying to help you. Don't be stupid." He turned the phone face down and went back to work. At 5:30, he left to pick up Mia from after-school care, same as always. The drive took 12 minutes. He spent 11 of them replaying the conversation with Elena, trying to figure out what he should have said instead. "I'm here because it's the right thing to do," sounded hollow. "I'm here because I don't know how not to be," sounded worse. The truth was somewhere in between, messy and incomplete. Mia was waiting by the door when he pulled up, chattering to one of the counselors about a science project involving volcanoes and too much baking soda. She spotted Adrian and waved, then sprinted to the car, backpack bouncing. "Dad, guess what?" "What?" "Emma's hamster had babies, 6 of them, and she says I can have one if you say it's okay." Mia climbed into the back seat, eyes wide and hopeful. "Can I, please?" Adrian pulled out of the parking lot. "We'll talk about it." "That means no." "That means we'll talk about it." Mia groaned dramatically and slumped against the window. "You always say that when you mean no." She wasn't wrong. Adrian glanced at her in the rearview mirror, at her scrunched-up face, and the way her hair was escaping from the ponytail Diane had probably wrestled into place that morning. 7 years old, still young enough to think a hamster was the biggest problem in the world. He needed to tell her about the baby, about Elena, about the fact that her carefully ordered life was about to get a lot more complicated. But not yet. Not until he had answers himself. They stopped at the grocery store on the way home because they were out of milk and bread and the kind of string cheese Mia would actually eat. Adrian grabbed a cart and started working through his mental list, the same list he'd been running for 3 years. Produce, dairy, frozen vegetables Mia would tolerate if he hid them in mac and cheese. Halfway down the cereal aisle, his phone buzzed. Elena, can we talk? Not about the investigation, about Thursday. Adrian typed back one-handed while Mia debated between two identical boxes of granola bars. What about it? Elena, I'm nervous, and I don't really have anyone else to talk to about this. He stopped walking. Read the message again. I'm nervous. Elena, who gave presentations to rooms full of executives without breaking a sweat, who'd once told off a client for mansplaining her own analysis, who carried herself like she'd never doubted a decision in her life. Adrian, want to grab dinner? We can talk then. The reply came fast. I don't think that's a good idea. People might see. Adrian, then come over. After Mia goes to bed. 8:30? A longer pause this time. Then, okay. Dad, which ones? Mia held up both boxes, impatient. Either. They're the same. They're not the same. This one has chocolate chips and this one has chocolate chips. Get the chocolate chips. Mia tossed both boxes in the cart, grinning. See? That wasn't so hard. They finished shopping, drove home, and fell into the familiar rhythm of the evening. Homework at the kitchen table while Adrian started dinner. Mia complaining about fractions. Adrian explaining them for the third time, watching her face scrunch up in concentration until something clicked, and she scribbled the answer with too much force, nearly tearing the paper. Dinner was spaghetti, because it was Wednesday, and Wednesday was always spaghetti. Mia talked non-stop about the hamster babies, about how unfair it was that Emma got to have pets and she didn't, about how responsible she was and how she'd do all the feeding and cleaning and Dad wouldn't have to do anything. Adrian listened, made non-committal sounds, and wondered how long it would take before she figured out something was wrong. After dinner, Mia took her bath, insisted on reading her own bedtime story for once, and was asleep by 8:15. Adrian stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching the rise and fall of her breathing, the way her hand curled around the edge of her blanket. She looked smaller when she slept. Younger. He thought about the baby, about whether it would be a boy or a girl, whether it would have Elena's sharp eyes or his stubborn mouth, whether Mia would resent it or love it, or some complicated mix of both. The doorbell rang at 8:32. Elena stood on his doorstep in jeans and a sweatshirt, hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup. She looked exhausted. Hey, Adrian said. Hey. She stepped inside, glanced around. This is nice. Cozy. It's small. Adrian closed the door. But it works. Coffee? Decaf? I'll make some. They moved to the kitchen, and Adrian busied himself with the coffee maker while Elena sat at the table, running her fingers along the edge of Mia's math homework. She's good at this. She hates it, but yeah, she gets it eventually. Does she know? About me? Not yet. Adrian poured water into the reservoir. I'm waiting until after the appointment, until it feels more real. Elena nodded slowly. It doesn't feel real to me either. I mean, I know it is. I've seen the test results, but it's like I'm watching it happen to someone else. How are you feeling? Physically, I mean. Tired, nauseous in the mornings. But okay. She paused. Scared? Adrian turned to look at her. Of what? Everything. Elena's laugh was soft, bitter. Of being a terrible mother. Of screwing this kid up before it's even born. Of doing this alone. You're not alone. Aren't I? She met his eyes. Be honest, Adrian. If the office wasn't watching, if HR wasn't breathing down our necks, would you still be here? The question hit harder than it should have. I don't know, Adrian admitted. Maybe not at first, but I'd get there eventually. That's not exactly reassuring. I'm not trying to reassure you. I'm trying to be honest. Adrian pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet, set them on the counter. I didn't plan this. I didn't want this. But it's happening, and I'm not the kind of person who runs from things just because they're hard. Even when running would be easier? Especially then. Elena studied him for a long moment. You're very sure of yourself. I'm not sure of anything, but I know what kind of man I want to be. And that man doesn't bail when things get complicated. The coffee maker beeped. Adrian poured 2 cups, handed one to Elena, and sat down across from her. The kitchen felt too small suddenly, the air too close. My mom raised me alone, Elena said quietly. My dad left when I was 3. Just walked out one day and never came back. And she tried. She really did. But she was angry all the time. At him, at herself, at me for existing. I grew up thinking I was the reason he left. That if I'd been better, smarter, quieter, he would have stayed. Adrian didn't know what to say to that. I don't want that for this kid, Elena continued. I don't want them growing up feeling like they're a burden, like they ruined someone's life just by being born. They won't. Adrian's voice came out rougher than he meant. Because we're not going to let that happen. How can you be so sure? Because I've already done this once. And yeah, I screwed up plenty with Mia, especially after the divorce. But she knows she's loved. She knows she matters. That's what counts. Elena wrapped both hands around her mug, staring down into the dark liquid. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be someone's mother. Nobody does, not at first. Adrian took a sip of coffee, winced at the heat. You just figure it out as you go. Make mistakes, fix them, make new mistakes. That's terrifying. Yeah, it is. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of a siren outside. Adrian thought about all the things he should say, reassurances, promises, plans, but none of it felt right. So he just sat there, drinking coffee he didn't want, keeping her company in the quiet. Finally, Elena spoke. Thursday. The appointment. What if something's wrong? Then we deal with it. Just like that? Just like that. Elena set her mug down. You make it sound simple. It's not. But worrying about it won't change anything. Adrian met her eyes. We show up. We listen to what the doctor says. We make decisions based on information, not fear. That's very logical. I'm a logical person. I've noticed. Elena's mouth quirked slightly, almost a smile. It's kind of annoying. So I've been told. This time she did smile, just for a second, before it faded. I should go. It's late. Adrian walked her to the door. She paused on the threshold, turned back. Thank you. For tonight. For not making me feel crazy. You're not crazy. I feel crazy. That's different. Adrian leaned against the door frame. You're going to be fine, Elena. We both are. She nodded, not quite believing it, and left. Adrian locked the door behind her and stood in the empty hallway, listening to the silence. Then he went back to the kitchen, dumped the coffee down the sink, and tried not to think about how little control he had over any of this. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of November weather that made everything feel heavier than it was. Adrian dropped Mia off at school, rescheduled his 9:30 meeting with a vague excuse about a personal appointment, and drove to the medical building on the east side of town. Elena was already there, sitting in the waiting room with a magazine she wasn't reading. She looked up when he walked in, relief flashing across her face. You came. I said I would. Adrian sat down beside her. How long have you been here? 20 minutes? I was early. She set the magazine aside. I'm terrible at waiting. Me too. They sat in awkward silence, surrounded by pregnant women in various stages and their partners, husbands, boyfriends, a couple holding hands and whispering to each other like they were sharing secrets. Adrian felt out of place, like an intruder in someone else's story. A nurse called Elena's name. They followed her back through a hallway lined with posters about prenatal vitamins and fetal development into a small exam room that smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. The nurse took Elena's vitals, asked a series of routine questions, then told them the doctor would be in shortly. The door closed. Elena sat on the exam table, paper crinkling beneath her. I hate these places. Hospitals? Medical offices. Hospitals. Anywhere that smells like this. She rubbed her arms, suddenly looking young and small. When my mom got sick, I spent 6 months in places like this, just waiting, watching her disappear piece by piece. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. Elena's voice went flat. I'm over it. She wasn't. Adrian could see it in the set of her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the edge of the table. But he didn't push. The door opened. Dr. Patel walked in, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an efficient manner. She shook both their hands, pulled up Elena's chart on a tablet, and got straight to business. So, 8 weeks. How are you feeling? Tired. Nauseous. Normal, I think? Very normal, doctor. Patel smiled. Any severe cramping or bleeding? No. Good. We'll do an ultrasound today, check development, get some measurements. This will be quick and painless, I promise. She dimmed the lights and rolled over the ultrasound machine, a bulky contraption that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. Elena lay back and Dr. Patel applied gel to her abdomen, then pressed the wand against her skin. The monitor flickered to life. Adrian stared at the screen, trying to make sense of the grainy black and white shapes. It looked like abstract art. Static. Nothing. Then Dr. Patel adjusted the angle, and suddenly there it was. A tiny flicker. Rhythmic. Fast. There's your baby, Dr. Patel said, and that's the heartbeat. Adrian stopped breathing. It was real, not a concept, not a problem to solve. A heartbeat. A life. Elena's hand found his, gripped hard. Everything looks good, doctor. Patel continued, pointing to various spots on the screen. Normal development for 8 weeks. Strong heartbeat. I'd say you're right on track. Adrian couldn't look away from the monitor. That tiny flicker, impossibly fast, impossibly fragile. His child. His. The word landed differently this time. Dr. Patel took measurements, printed out a couple of grainy images, and handed them to Elena. Your next appointment will be at 12 weeks. We'll do more detailed imaging then. In the meantime, keep taking your prenatal vitamins, get rest, and call if anything feels off. Thank you, Elena managed. They left the office in a daze, stepping out into the cold November air. Adrian still held the ultrasound image, staring at the barely visible shape that was supposed to be a person. That was real, Elena said. Yeah. I mean, I knew it was real, but seeing it, I know. They stood on the sidewalk, traffic rushing past, people hurrying by with coffee cups and briefcases and normal lives. Adrian felt like he'd just stepped out of a different universe. His phone buzzed, a text from Jennifer in HR. Need to schedule a follow-up meeting, tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Reality crashed back. I have to go, Adrian said. Meeting. Elena nodded. Me too. She took the ultrasound image from him, studied it one more time. Thanks for being here. I'll always be here. The words came out before he could stop them, too big and too certain. But he didn't take them back. Elena looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. Then she turned and walked to her car, and Adrian watched her go, feeling the weight of what he'd just promised settle onto his shoulders like a coat he couldn't take off. He drove back to the office, made it through 2 meetings on autopilot, and spent the rest of the day avoiding Paul Cartwright's increasingly aggressive attempts to corner him. At 5:30, he picked up Mia, who was in a terrible mood because someone had stolen her favorite pencil and the teacher said she had to share. Sharing is stupid, Mia announced in the car. Why do I have to share my stuff when people don't share with me? Because that's how it works. It's a dumb rule. Welcome to life, kiddo. Mia crossed her arms and glared out the window, and Adrian bit back a smile. She was so much like him it was almost painful. That night, after Mia was asleep, Adrian sat at the kitchen table with the ultrasound image Elena had texted him. He stared at it until his eyes blurred, trying to connect that tiny shape to the massive change barreling toward him. His phone rang. Diane. Hey, he answered. Hey, I just wanted to check in. Mia said you've been distracted lately. Adrian closed his eyes. Of course she'd noticed. I'm fine, just work stuff. Adrian, Diane's voice went gentle. I know you. Something's going on. He could lie, make up an excuse, but Diane would see through it eventually. She always did. Can we talk tomorrow? In person? A pause. Should I be worried? No, there's something I need to tell you about Mia, about the future. Another pause, longer this time. Okay, tomorrow. Coffee after drop-off? Yeah, thanks, Diane. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. She hung up, and Adrian sat in the dark kitchen, holding an ultrasound image of a baby that wasn't his ex-wife's, trying to figure out how to explain that his carefully managed life had just spun completely out of his control. The HR meeting the next day was worse than Adrian expected. Jennifer sat across from him with a file folder that seemed too thick for a situation this simple. and she went through a list of allegations that made his blood run cold. Someone had claimed he'd been pursuing Elena inappropriately for months, that he'd used his position to pressure her, that the pregnancy was the result of a pattern of harassment, not a consensual encounter. "That's not true," Adrian said, voice hard. "None of that is true. I'm just telling you what's been reported." Jennifer's face remained neutral. "You'll have an opportunity to respond formally. But Adrian, I have to tell you, these are serious accusations. If the investigation finds merit, there's no merit because it didn't happen." Adrian leaned forward. "Who made the complaint?" "That's confidential." "Was it Paul Cartwright?" Jennifer didn't answer, which was answer enough. Adrian left HR feeling like he'd been punched. He went straight to his office, closed the door, and called Elena. "They're saying I harassed you," he said the moment she picked up. "That I coerced you." "I know. Jennifer asked me about it this morning. I told her it was complete fiction." "It's Paul. He's building a narrative." "I know." Elena's voice shook slightly. "Adrian, they asked me if I felt safe working with you, if I wanted to transfer departments." "What did you say?" "That I felt perfectly safe. That the only person making me uncomfortable was whoever was spreading these lies." She exhaled slowly. "But they didn't believe me. I could see it in Jennifer's face. They think I'm covering for you." Adrian pressed his palm against his forehead. "This is insane. It's going to get worse before it gets better." "Then let it." Adrian's jaw set. "I'm not backing down, and I'm not letting them destroy you to get to me." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but something." He hung up and sat in the silence of his office, rage and helplessness warring in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to find Paul, to confront him, to make him admit what he was doing, but that would only make things worse, give them ammunition. So instead, Adrian opened his laptop and started documenting everything. Every conversation, every email, every interaction he'd had with Elena since that night 6 weeks ago. Building his own case, line by line, detail by detail. If they wanted a fight, he'd give them one, but he'd do it the right way. At 5:30, he left to meet Diane at the coffee shop near Mia's school. She was already there, 2 cups on the table, her expression wary. Adrian sat down. "Thanks for meeting me. You sounded serious on the phone." Diane studied his face. "What's going on?" There was no easy way to say it. "I'm going to have another child. With someone who's not you." Diane went very still. "What?" "Her name's Elena. We worked together. It wasn't planned. But she's 8 weeks pregnant and I'm going to be involved." Diane stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. When did this happen?" 6 weeks ago. One night. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" Diane's voice went flat. "You had a one-night stand and got someone pregnant." "Yes." "And you're just telling me now?" "I found out a week ago." "I needed time to process it before what? Before you figured out how to spin it?" Diane's hands tightened around her cup. "Adrian, Mia is 7 years old. You're going to blow up her entire world with this." "I know." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you made a selfish, reckless decision, and now everyone else has to deal with the fallout." The words stung because they were true. "I didn't plan this, Diane, but I'm not walking away from it either." "Why not? You walked away from us." Adrian flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Diane leaned forward. "You left, Adrian. You packed your stuff and moved out because you couldn't handle the mess. And now you're telling me you're diving headfirst into someone else's mess? It's not the same." "How is it different?" "Because I'm different." Adrian met her eyes. "I made mistakes with you. With Mia, I was so busy trying to control everything that I lost what mattered. But this time I'm choosing to show up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Diane sat back, something shifting in her expression. "Who is she?" "This Elena." "Someone I barely know, but someone who deserves better than being abandoned." "And what about Mia?" "Mia gets a sibling and 2 parents who are trying to do the right thing." Diane shook her head slowly. "This is going to break her heart." Or it'll teach her that people make mistakes and still find a way forward. You're really doing this. I am. Diane looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. Then I'll help with Mia, with whatever she needs to process this. But Adrian, don't screw this up. Not again. I won't. He left the coffee shop feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because Diane hadn't fought him. Heavier because now it was real in a way it hadn't been before. He'd said it out loud, committed to it. There was no going back. That night, Adrian sat Mia down after dinner and told her she was going to be a big sister. She stared at him, confused. But you and Mom aren't. Not with Mom. With someone else. Her name's Elena. Mia's face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, surprise, hurt. Do you love her? It's complicated. That's a grown-up way of saying no. Mia crossed her arms. So you're having a baby with someone you don't even love? I care about her, and I'm going to care about the baby. Just like I care about you. But I'll have to share you. You'll never have to share my love for you, Mia. That doesn't get divided. It just grows. Mia didn't look convinced. She stared at the table, picking at a stain on the wood. When? The baby? 6 more months. That's soon. Yeah, it is. Mia stood up abruptly. I'm going to my room. Mia. I need to think. She walked away and Adrian let her go, knowing that pushing would only make it worse. He sat alone at the kitchen table, wondering if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. Wondering if choosing to stay meant losing what he already had. His phone buzzed. Elena. How did it go with Mia? Adrian. About as well as expected. She needs time. Elena. I'm sorry. Adrian. Don't be. This is on me. Elena. It's on both of us. He stared at the message, then typed, We'll figure it out. Elena. Promise? Adrian. Promise. He meant it, even though he had no idea how. Mia didn't speak to him for 2 days. She answered his questions with one-word responses, picked at her food during dinner, and spent every evening locked in her room building Lego structures that grew increasingly elaborate and angry-looking. Adrian watched her retreat into herself and felt powerless to stop it. On Saturday morning, she finally broke her silence. I don't want a sister, she announced over breakfast, stabbing her scrambled eggs with unnecessary force. Adrian set down his coffee. We don't know if it's a sister yet. I don't want a brother either. Mia's eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying. I don't want any of this. I know, kiddo. Then why did you do it? Her voice cracked. Why did you have to ruin everything? The question hit like a physical blow. I didn't mean to ruin anything. But you did. Mia threw her fork down. Everything was fine, and now you're going to have a new family and forget about me. That's not true. That will never be true. Yes, it will. The baby will be little and cute, and I'll just be the kid from before. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'll be the mistake you had with Mom. Adrian moved around the table, crouched beside her chair. Mia, look at me. He waited until she did, her face blotchy and furious. You are not a mistake. You have never been a mistake. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Then why do you need another kid? I don't need another kid, but I have one coming, and I'm not going to abandon them, just like I would never abandon you. Adrian took her hand. I know this is scary. I know it feels like everything's changing, but my love for you, that doesn't change. Not ever. Mia pulled her hand away. You say that now. And I'll say it every day for the rest of your life, if that's what it takes. She stared at him, searching his face for something. Then she stood up, leaving her breakfast half-eaten, and walked to her room. But this time she left the door open. It wasn't much, but it was something. Adrian's phone rang while he was washing dishes. Elena. Hey, he answered. Everything okay? Define okay. Her voice sounded strained. I just got an email from Jennifer. They want to do a formal deposition next Wednesday, with a lawyer present. Adrian's grip tightened on the phone. A lawyer? Carter and Lee's lawyer. They're taking this to the legal team. Elena's breath hitched. Adrian, they're building a case for termination. Mine or yours or both. I don't know anymore. On what grounds? Workplace misconduct, violation of professional ethics, They're twisting everything. She paused. Paul gave a statement yesterday. I don't know what he said, but Jennifer's tone changed completely after that meeting. Adrian set down the dish he'd been washing. We need to lawyer up too. With what money? Do you know how much employment lawyers cost? I don't care what it costs. We're not doing this alone. Adrian, no. Listen to me. He moved to the living room, keeping his voice low so Mia wouldn't hear. They're trying to destroy us because we won't play their game, because we won't disappear quietly, but I'm not letting Paul Cartwright win. Not this time. Elena was quiet for a long moment. I'm tired, Adrian. I'm so tired of fighting. I know, but we're almost through this. Are we? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like it's just getting started. She wasn't wrong. The investigation had been going on for 2 weeks, and instead of losing steam, it was gaining momentum. More interviews, more allegations, more pressure. Come over tonight, Adrian said. After Mia's asleep, we'll figure this out together. I don't think that's a good idea. If someone sees, I don't care who sees. Adrian's voice went hard. They've already decided we're guilty. Hiding isn't going to change that. Another pause. Then quietly, okay, 9 o'clock? Elena showed up at 9:15 looking exhausted. She'd pulled her hair into a ponytail, and she wore sweatpants and an oversized sweater that made her look younger than she was. Vulnerable. Adrian let her in, made tea, neither of them wanted, and they sat at the kitchen table with a laptop between them, searching for employment lawyers who specialized in workplace harassment cases. This one looks good, Elena said, pointing to a name. Rebecca Chen. She's handled cases against companies bigger than Carter and Lee. Adrian clicked through to the website. Her retainer is $15,000. I don't have $15,000. I do, in savings. Elena looked up sharply. That's Mia's college fund. It's my money, and I'll use it however I need to. Adrian, no, I can't let you. You're not letting me do anything. I'm making a choice. He met her eyes. We're in this together, remember? Elena's throat worked. I hate that you have to do this. I hate that we're being forced to do this. But here we are. Adrian opened a new tab, started filling out the contact form. We'll call her Monday, set up a consultation. They worked in silence for a while, gathering documentation, screenshots of emails, timelines of events, building their defense piece by piece. At some point, Elena stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the dark street beyond. Do you ever regret it? That night? Adrian stopped typing. Do you? I asked first. He thought about it, really thought about it. The chaos, the fear, the way his entire life had been upended in the span of 6 weeks. No, he said finally. I regret how it happened. I regret that we didn't know each other better first. But the result? He gestured vaguely toward her. No, I don't regret that. Elena turned to face him. Even though it's destroying everything? It's not destroying everything. It's just revealing who people really are. Adrian leaned back in his chair. Paul was always a snake. HR was always more interested in protecting the company than protecting people. This just brought it to the surface. That's very philosophical of you. I have my moments. Elena almost smiled. Almost. What if we lose? What if they fire us both and we end up broke and unemployed with a baby on the way? Then we figure it out, find new jobs, start over. Adrian shrugged. It wouldn't be the first time I had to rebuild. You make it sound simple. It's not, but the alternative is giving up. And I'm not doing that. Elena walked back to the table, sat down. I don't know how you stay so calm. I'm not calm. I'm terrified. Adrian met her eyes. But being terrified doesn't help anyone. So I focus on what I can control, which right now is making sure we have the best lawyer we can afford. Control freak. Guilty. This time she did smile, just barely. They went back to work, and somewhere around midnight, Elena fell asleep at the table, head pillowed on her arms. Adrian grabbed a blanket from the couch, draped it over her shoulders, and let her sleep. He sat across from her, watching the rise and fall of her breathing, and felt something shift in his chest. Not love, not yet, but something close, something that felt like the beginning of it. His phone buzzed, a text from Diane. How's Mia doing? Adrian. Still processing. She's angry. Diane. Give her time. She'll come around. Adrian. I hope so. Diane. She will. She's your daughter. Stubborn as hell, but fair. Adrian smiled despite himself. Thanks. Diane. How are you doing? The question surprised him. Diane rarely asked about him anymore, not since the divorce. Adrian. Hanging in there. Diane. If you need help with Mia during all this, let me know. I can take her more days if it helps. Adrian stared at the message, something loosening in his chest. I appreciate that. Diane. We're still a team when it comes to her, even if we're not anything else. Adrian. I know, thank you. He set the phone down and looked at Elena, still asleep, still wearing the weight of everything on her face, even in rest. 2 women in his life now who deserved better than the mess he'd created, and a daughter who deserved stability. He didn't know how to give them all what they needed, but he was going to try. Monday morning, Adrian called Rebecca Chen's office and scheduled a consultation for Tuesday afternoon. He and Elena took half days from work, met at the lawyer's office downtown, and spent 2 hours laying out their case. Rebecca Chen was exactly what they needed. Sharp, no nonsense, and deeply unimpressed by Carter and Lee's tactics. They're trying to bully you into quitting, she said, flipping through the documentation they'd provided. Classic corporate strategy. Make it so uncomfortable that you leave voluntarily, and they avoid a wrongful termination suit. Can they do that? Elena asked. They can try, but they'd need actual evidence of misconduct, and from what I'm seeing here, they don't have any. Rebecca looked up. What they have is a senior VP with a grudge and an HR department willing to look the other way. So what do we do? Adrian asked. We call their bluff. I'll file a formal response on your behalf, challenging the allegations point by point. We'll request full disclosure of the evidence they're using. And if they can't produce it, which I suspect they can't, we threaten a lawsuit for workplace harassment and defamation. A lawsuit? Elena's voice went faint. Against Carter and Lee? Only if it comes to that. Most likely, they'll back down once they realize you're serious. Rebecca leaned forward. But I need to be clear. This could get ugly. If they decide to dig in, it'll be expensive and time-consuming. Are you prepared for that? Adrian looked at Elena. She looked back at him, fear and determination warring on her face. Yes, they said together. Rebecca nodded. Then let's go to war. They left the lawyer's office feeling something Adrian hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Small and fragile, but real. Thank you, Elena said as they walked to their cars, for doing this, for not backing down. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. She stopped, turned to face him. I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know you could have walked away a dozen times by now, but you didn't, and that means something. Adrian didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, and they went their separate ways. That night, Mia came out of her room during dinner and actually sat at the table. Progress. I've been thinking, she said, pushing peas around her plate. About what? About the baby. She didn't look up. If it's a girl, can I help pick her name? Adrian felt his throat tighten. Yeah, kiddo, you can help. And if it's a boy? Then you can help with that too. Mia nodded slowly. Okay, but I still think this is weird. It is weird, and I'm still mad at you. I know. But I guess if there's going to be a baby, I should at least make sure it doesn't get a stupid name. Adrian smiled. That's very generous of you. I'm a generous person. Mia finally looked up, her expression serious. Dad? Yeah? Do you love Elena? The question caught him off guard. I care about her. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. Then why are you having a baby with her? Adrian set down his fork. Because sometimes life doesn't go the way you plan. And when that happens, you have a choice. You can run from it, or you can face it. I'm choosing to face it. Even if you don't love her? Even then. Mia considered this, chewing thoughtfully. What if you fall in love with her later? I don't know. Maybe. Would that be bad? No, Mia. That wouldn't be bad. Okay. She went back to her peas, apparently satisfied. Just making sure. Adrian watched her eat, this fierce, complicated little human he'd somehow managed to create, and felt a surge of gratitude so strong it nearly knocked him over. The following Wednesday, Adrian and Elena sat across from Jennifer in HR, Rebecca Chen beside them, and listened as the company's lawyer laid out the formal allegations. It was worse than Adrian had expected. They weren't just accusing him of harassment, they were building a narrative of predatory behavior, claiming he'd targeted Elena specifically, that he'd created a hostile work environment, that the pregnancy was the culmination of months of inappropriate conduct. It was all lies. But it was detailed, documented lies, backed by statements from Paul and 2 other employees who claimed they'd witnessed concerning behavior. Rebecca listened, took notes, and when the company's lawyer finished, she smiled. "Thank you for that colorful fiction," she said pleasantly. "Now let me tell you what actually happened." She proceeded to dismantle their case piece by piece, pointing out inconsistencies in the timeline, demanding evidence that didn't exist, and highlighting the obvious bias in Paul's statements. "What you have here," Rebecca concluded, "is a vendetta orchestrated by a senior executive who was rejected by my client and is now using company resources to retaliate. That's not just unethical, it's illegal. And if you proceed with this charade, we will file suit for workplace harassment, defamation, and gender discrimination." Jennifer's expression went carefully blank. The company lawyer shifted in his seat. "We'll need to review this new information," Jennifer said finally. "You do that," Rebecca stood. "And while you're reviewing, I'll be filing a formal complaint with the EEOC, just to keep things interesting." They left the conference room, and Adrian felt like he could finally breathe. "That was incredible," Elena whispered as they walked to the elevator. "That was just the opening salvo," Rebecca said. "But it should be enough to make them think twice." It was. 3 days later, Adrian received an email from Jennifer requesting a private meeting. He brought Rebecca. Jennifer looked tired. "The company has decided to suspend the investigation pending further review." "Suspend or close?" Rebecca asked. "Suspend." "Not good enough. My clients need closure. Either close the investigation and issue a formal apology, or we proceed with legal action." Jennifer glanced at the company lawyer, who nodded reluctantly. "Fine, we'll close it. No findings of misconduct. Clean record for both Mr. Blake and Miss Ward. And Paul Cartwright?" Adrian spoke for the first time. Jennifer's jaw tightened. "That's an internal matter." "Make it an external matter," Rebecca said, "because if he's still employed here, my clients have grounds to argue ongoing harassment." Another tense pause. Then Jennifer sighed. "Mr. Cartwright will be transitioning to a different role, effective immediately." It wasn't a firing, but it was close enough. They left HR for the last time, and in the elevator, Elena turned to Adrian and laughed. Not a happy laugh. A relieved, exhausted, slightly hysterical laugh. "We did it," she said. "We did." "I can't believe we actually did it." Adrian couldn't either, but they had. They'd stood their ground, refused to be bullied, and won. That night, he took Mia out for celebratory ice cream and told her the fight was over. "Does that mean everything's going back to normal?" she asked. "No, kiddo. But it means things can start moving forward." "Forward where?" Adrian looked at his daughter, at her gap-toothed smile and her dinosaur t-shirt, and her eyes that saw too much. "I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out together." "You always say that." "Because it's always true." Mia rolled her eyes but didn't argue. They finished their ice cream, drove home, and Adrian tucked her into bed the same way he had every night for 7 years. "Dad?" she said as he turned off the light. "Yeah?" "I'm still scared about the baby." "Me too. But I guess it'll be okay, probably." "Probably. And if it's not okay, we'll figure it out together." Adrian smiled. "Exactly." He closed her door and walked to the kitchen, where his phone was buzzing with a text from Elena. "Thank you for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you." Adrian stared at the message, then typed, "You would have been fine. You're stronger than you think." Elena, "Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to find out." Adrian, "Me too." He set the phone down and stood in the quiet apartment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. The investigation was over. The immediate crisis had passed. But the harder part was still ahead, figuring out how to be a father to 2 children, how to build something real with a woman he barely knew, how to merge 2 separate lives into something that made sense. He didn't have answers, but for the first time in weeks, he felt like maybe he didn't need them yet. Maybe it was enough to just take it one day at a time, one decision at a time, one small step forward at a time. His phone buzzed again. Elena. Next appointment is in 2 weeks. Will you come? Adrian. Always. And he meant it. The 12-week appointment brought news Adrian hadn't expected. They were having a girl. He sat in the ultrasound room, staring at the screen where Dr. Patel pointed out fingers and toes and the unmistakable evidence of a daughter, and felt the world tilt sideways. Another girl. Another Mia. Except not Mia at all. You okay? Elena asked, watching his face. Yeah, just processing. You look pale. I'm fine. But he wasn't. He was thinking about princess dresses and soccer cleats and bedtime stories times 2. About Mia's face when she found out she was getting a sister. About whether she'd be relieved or devastated or some complicated mix of both. Dr. Patel printed out the images, handed them over with a smile. Everything looks perfect. Growth is right on track. Any questions? Elena had a dozen. Adrian listened to them talk about prenatal vitamins and exercise and dietary restrictions, nodding when it seemed appropriate. But his mind was elsewhere, on the number in his savings account that was $15,000 smaller, on the apartment that suddenly felt too cramped for 3 people, let alone 4, on the fact that he had no idea how to explain to Mia that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't even imagine yet. They left the medical building and stood in the parking lot, cold December wind cutting through their coats. A girl, Elena said softly, one hand resting on her stomach. I was sure it was going to be a boy. Does it matter? No, but it feels different knowing. She looked at him. Are you disappointed? Why would I be disappointed? I don't know. Some men want sons. I already have a daughter. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Why would I want something different? Adrian pulled his coat tighter. I'm just trying to figure out the logistics. Logistics? Elena's mouth quirked. You're such a project manager. Someone has to be. We could start looking at cribs, baby furniture, figure out what you need. What we need, Adrian corrected. This isn't just my problem. Right. We. Elena said the word carefully, like she was testing its weight. That's going to take some getting used to. They stood there awkwardly, neither quite sure how to navigate this strange partnership they'd created. Not friends, not lovers. Something in between that didn't have a name yet. I should go, Elena said finally. I've got a presentation at 2. Yeah, me too. Budget meeting. Adrian hesitated. Do you want to grab dinner this week? Talk about next steps? Like planning? Like planning. Exactly what you'd expect from me. Elena smiled. Thursday work? Thursday's good. They went their separate ways and Adrian drove back to the office thinking about cribs and college funds and how he was supposed to fit another human being into a life that already felt stretched too thin. That night, he told Mia about the baby over spaghetti. It's a girl, he said, watching her face carefully. Mia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. A sister? Yeah. She set the fork down thinking. That's better than a brother, I guess. Boys are gross. Adrian bit back a smile. Most boys, yeah. What's her name going to be? We haven't decided yet, but you said you wanted to help, right? Mia perked up slightly. I have ideas. I'm sure you do. Can it be a dinosaur name like Velociraptor? Absolutely not. Why not? That's a cool name. Because our daughter is not going to be named after a predator that lived 65 million years ago. Our daughter, Mia repeated slowly. That sounds weird. It is weird. But I guess if she has to exist, at least she'll be a girl. We can teach her stuff. Mia twisted spaghetti around her fork. Does Elena know about me? Of course she knows about you. No, I mean really no. Like that I'm not going to be nice to her just because she's having a baby. That I'm not going to pretend everything's okay. Adrian set down his water glass. Elena doesn't expect you to pretend anything, but she'd like to meet you when you're ready. I'm never going to be ready. That's fine too. Mia looked at him suspiciously. You're not going to force me? No. But eventually you're going to have to at least be in the same room as her because she's going to be around. How much around? I don't know yet. We're still figuring that out. Mia went back to her spaghetti, chewing thoughtfully. Is she nice? Yeah, she's nice. Is she pretty? Why does that matter? I'm just asking. Adrian sighed. Yes, Mia, she's pretty. Do you think she's prettier than Mom? That's not... They're different people. It's not a competition. Everything's a competition. Mia grinned, sauce on her chin. That's what you always say about work. Work is different from people. If you say so. She stood up, carried her plate to the sink. Can I call Emma? I want to tell her I'm getting a sister. Sure. Mia disappeared into her room, and Adrian sat alone at the table, staring at the half-eaten plate of spaghetti and wondering when his 7-year-old had gotten so perceptive. She'd asked the question he'd been avoiding for weeks. Was Elena pretty? Yes. Did that matter? It shouldn't. But somewhere in the chaos of the past 2 months, he'd started noticing things. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the line that appeared between her eyebrows when she was frustrated, the rare moments when she laughed and her whole face changed. He wasn't in love with her, but he could see how he might get there given time, and that terrified him more than anything else. Thursday came, and Adrian met Elena at a quiet restaurant on the edge of town, the kind of place with dim lighting and booze designed for private conversations. She was already there when he arrived, studying a menu with the same intensity she probably brought to quarterly reports. Hey, Adrian said, sliding into the seat across from her. Hey yourself. Elena set the menu down. I ordered wine, then remembered I can't drink it, so I'm having sparkling water and pretending. Rough day. Paul cornered me in the break room, asked how I was feeling, like we're old friends. Her jaw tightened. He's been reassigned to a satellite office, but apparently he still comes in for meetings. Did you report it to Jennifer? What's the point? The investigation's closed. If I make noise now, I'm the problem employee. Elena took a sip of water. I just want this to be over. It is over. Is it? Because it doesn't feel over. It feels like everyone's waiting for the next disaster. Adrian didn't have an answer for that. The office had been tense since the investigation closed. Whispers in hallways, sideways glances, a collective holding of breath. People didn't know how to act around them anymore. Their server appeared, took their orders, disappeared again. Elena fiddled with her napkin. I've been thinking about what happens after, she said quietly. After the baby comes. How we're going to make this work. I've been thinking about that too. And I don't have answers. But we need to figure out custody, logistics, living arrangements. Living arrangements. Elena looked up sharply. Are you suggesting we live together? No, I'm suggesting we figure out where we're both going to live so we can split time reasonably. Adrian pulled out his phone, opened the Notes app where he'd been sketching ideas. Right now you're renting that apartment downtown. 1 bedroom, not enough space for a baby. And I'm in a 2-bedroom that's barely big enough for Mia and me. So what are you proposing? I move. Find a 3-bedroom, something with space for Mia and a nursery. You stay at your place until the baby comes, then we figure out a schedule. Maybe she stays with you 3 nights a week, with me 4. Or we alternate weeks. Elena stared at him. You've really thought this through. That's what I do. No, I mean, you've actually built a plan for co-parenting someone you're not in a relationship with. Would you rather I didn't? No, it's just... She shook her head. Most men would have run by now, but you're sitting here making spreadsheets. I don't make spreadsheets for everything. Adrian, you color code your calendar. That's different. Elena laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. You're impossible. So I've been told. The food arrived, and they ate in companionable silence for a while. Adrian watched Elena push her salad around her plate, noticed the shadows under her eyes. How are you really doing? He asked. Tired, scared, overwhelmed. She set down her fork. I keep having this dream where the baby's born, and I don't know what to do with her. Like someone hands her to me and I just freeze, and everyone's watching, waiting for me to figure it out, and I can't. That's normal. How do you know? Because I had the same dream when Diane was pregnant with Mia. Terrified the hell out of me. Elena looked up. Really? Really? I was convinced I was going to drop her, or forget to feed her, or somehow screw it up so badly that she'd need therapy for the rest of her life. Adrian took a drink of water. Turns out, You just do what you can, and you figure out the rest as you go. That doesn't sound very reassuring. It's not meant to be reassuring. It's meant to be honest. Elena studied him across the table. Do you ever wish things had gone differently? That we'd met some other way? Sometimes, but we didn't. So there's no point wishing. Adrian met her eyes. Do you? Every day. Her voice went soft. I wish I'd known you before all this. I wish we'd had time to actually date, to figure out if we even liked each other before we had to become parents together. We like each other. Do we? Or are we just making the best of a bad situation? Adrian considered the question. Both, maybe. But that doesn't make it less real. Elena's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across her face. I'm afraid I'm going to fail her. The baby. I'm afraid I'm going to be like my mother, angry and resentful and blaming a child for existing. You won't be. How can you be sure? Because you're already worried about it. People who don't care don't worry. Adrian leaned forward. Elena, you're going to make mistakes. So am I. But we're going to make them trying, and that's what matters. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Okay? Okay, I'll try to believe you. They finished dinner, and Adrian drove Elena back to her car, parked in the restaurant lot. She paused before getting out. Thank you, she said. For dinner? For the plan? For not making me feel crazy. You're not crazy. I feel crazy most of the time. Join the club. Elena smiled, hesitated, then reached across the console and squeezed his hand. I'm glad you're doing this with me, even if it's terrifying. Me too. She let go, climbed out of the car, and drove away. Adrian sat in the parking lot for a long moment, staring at his hand where she'd touched it, feeling the ghost of that contact like a brand. This was getting complicated in ways he hadn't anticipated. The next 2 months passed in a blur of doctor's appointments and furniture shopping and tense moments at work, where people still looked at them like they were waiting for the other shoe to drop. Adrian found a new apartment, 3 bedrooms, better school district, close enough to Elena's place that they could manage the logistics. He told Mia they were moving, and she cried for an hour before accepting it. I liked our old place, she said, sitting on the floor of her soon-to-be former bedroom. I know, but we need more space. For the baby. Yeah. Everything's for the baby now. Mia's voice went small. What about what I want? Adrian sat down beside her. What do you want? I want things to be normal again. I want it to be just us. I know, kiddo. But that's not going to happen, is it? No, it's not. Adrian put his arm around her. But I promise you, no matter how big our family gets, you're always going to be my first. You're always going to matter. Mia leaned against him. Do you promise? Like really promise? Really promise. She sniffled. Can my new room have blue walls? Not pink. I hate pink. Blue walls it is. They moved in February, 2 months before the baby was due. Mia picked the bedroom with the window seat, and Adrian set up the nursery in the room next to his, painting the walls a soft yellow because they didn't know what else to choose. Elena came over one Saturday to help assemble the crib, and Mia hid in her room the entire time, refusing to come out. She hates me, Elena said, struggling with a particularly stubborn bolt. She doesn't hate you, she's scared. Of me? Of change, of losing what she has. Adrian handed her a screwdriver. Give her time. How much time? As much as she needs. Elena tightened the bolt, straightened up. I don't know how you do this. Do what? Stay so patient. I'd have lost my mind by now. I have lost my mind. I'm just good at hiding it. Adrian picked up the instruction manual, squinted at the incomprehensible diagrams. Why do they make these things so complicated? Because they hate us. Elena grabbed the manual, flipped it upside down. This makes more sense. It's literally the same picture. No, it's not. Look. That piece goes there, not there. They bickered good-naturedly over the crib assembly for another hour, and when it was finally done, they stood back and looked at it. A real crib, for a real baby. Their baby. It's happening, Elena said. Yeah. I'm not ready. Nobody's ready. Elena turned to look at him. You seem ready. I'm faking it. You're good at that too. Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from Diane. Can I come by? Need to talk to you about something. He frowned. Now? Diane. If you're free. Adrian. Give me 20 minutes. He told Elena he had to deal with something, and she left, promising to come back next week to help with the rest of the nursery setup. Adrian cleaned up the scattered crib parts and waited. Diane showed up exactly 20 minutes later, looking stressed. Everything okay? Adrian asked, letting her in. Mia called me last night, crying. Diane set her purse down. She said she wanted to live with me full time, that she doesn't want to be here when the baby comes. Adrian felt his stomach drop. What did you tell her? That I'd talk to you. But Adrian, she's serious. She's really struggling. I know she is. I'm trying to help her through it. Are you? Because from where she's sitting, it looks like you're building a whole new life and expecting her to just fall in line. Diane's voice wasn't accusatory, just tired. She feels replaced. She's not replaced. I know that, you know that, but she's 7, and all she sees is you preparing for a new daughter. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. What do you want me to do? I don't know, but you need to do something before this breaks her. Diane glanced around the apartment. Where is she? In her room. Can I talk to her? Yeah, please. Diane went down the hall, knocked on Mia's door. Adrian heard the soft murmur of voices, but couldn't make out words. He sat on the couch, head in his hands, feeling like he was failing everyone. 20 minutes later, Diane emerged with Mia, who looked red-eyed but calmer. I'm sorry, Dad, Mia said quietly. For what? For being mean about the baby. Mom says I'm not being fair. Adrian looked at Diane, who shrugged slightly. Come here, kiddo. He pulled Mia onto his lap, even though she was getting too big for it. You're allowed to feel however you feel. You don't have to apologize for that. But I was being selfish. You were being human. That's different. Adrian smoothed her hair back. I know this is hard. I know you're scared. But I need you to trust me when I say that you're not being replaced. You're just getting a sister. A sister I didn't ask for. True, but sometimes the best things are the ones we didn't ask for. Mia looked up at him. Do you really believe that? I'm trying to. She nodded slowly. Can I meet Elena? For real this time, not just hiding in my room? Adrian glanced at Diane, who nodded encouragingly. Yeah, we can set that up. Okay, but if I don't like her, I'm allowed to say so. Deal. Mia climbed off his lap and went back to her room. Diane sat down beside Adrian. Thank you, he said. I didn't do much. Just reminded her that you love her. She needed to hear it from someone else. Diane studied his face. How are you holding up? Honestly, I have no idea. That's what I figured. She stood. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. It's messy and complicated, but you're trying. That counts for something. After she left, Adrian sat in the quiet apartment and thought about trying. About how it never felt like enough, but was all he had to give. He texted Elena. Mia wants to meet you. Are you free tomorrow? The response came quickly. Really? Yes. Where? Adrian. Lunch. Somewhere neutral. I'll pick a place. Elena. I'm nervous. Adrian. Me too. The next day they met at a family restaurant with plastic menus and crayons for kids. Mia sat between Adrian and Diane, who'd agreed to come for moral support, and Elena sat across from them, looking more nervous than Adrian had ever seen her. Hi, Mia, Elena said. It's nice to finally meet you. Mia stared at her, unblinking. You're the one having the baby. Yes. My dad's baby. Yes. Do you love him? Mia, Adrian said sharply. What? I'm just asking. Elena held up a hand. It's okay. She looked at Mia directly. I care about your dad very much, but we're not in love. We're friends who are having a baby together. That's weird. It is weird, Elena agreed. But sometimes weird is okay. Mia picked up a crayon, started coloring on the paper placemat. Are you going to be mean to my dad? No. Are you going to take him away from me? No. I promise. Promises don't mean anything. My mom's boyfriend promised he'd take me to the zoo, and he never did. Elena glanced at Diane, who looked mortified. I'm sorry that happened to you, but I keep my promises. Prove it. How? Mia thought for a moment. Promise you'll let me help with the baby. Not just pick her name, but real stuff. Like feeding her and changing her diaper and teaching her things. Elena's expression softened. I promise. I'm going to need all the help I can get. Okay. Mia went back to coloring. You can stay. Adrian felt something loosen in his chest. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. They ordered lunch, and slowly Mia started asking questions. What was Elena's favorite color? Did she like dinosaurs? Could she do a cartwheel? Elena answered each one patiently, and by the end of the meal, Mia was actually smiling. She's not terrible, Mia whispered to Adrian as they walked to the car. High praise. I still don't want a sister, but if I have to have one, at least her mom is okay. I'm glad you think so. That night, Adrian got a text from Elena. Thank you for today. Mia's amazing. Adrian. She liked you too. In her own way. Elena. Do you think this is going to work? Really? Adrian stared at the question. He didn't know, but he typed anyway. Yeah, I think it will. Because what else could he say? They'd come too far to turn back now. The call came at 2:47 in the morning on a Tuesday in late April. Adrian jolted awake, fumbling for his phone in the dark, heart already hammering. Nothing good ever came from calls at this hour. Adrian, Elena's voice was tight, breathless. My water broke. He was out of bed before she finished the sentence. Are you at home? Yes. I called my neighbor. She's driving me to the hospital, but I thought you should know. I'm coming. Which hospital? Mercy General. But you don't have to. I'm coming. Adrian was already pulling on jeans looking for his keys. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, stood in the dark hallway, and realized Mia was asleep down the hall. He couldn't just leave her. He pulled up Diane's number, hesitated for only a second before calling. She answered on the third ring, groggy. Adrian? What's wrong? Elena's in labor. I need to get to the hospital. Can you? I'll be there in 15 minutes. Diane was already moving. He could hear it. Go. I've got Mia. Thank you. Just go. Adrian scribbled a note for Mia in case she woke up before Diane arrived, grabbed his wallet and keys, and drove through empty streets with his hands tight on the wheel. The hospital was across town, and every red light felt like an eternity. He made it in 18 minutes, parked haphazardly in the emergency lot, and ran inside. The night nurse at the desk looked up, unimpressed by his urgency. I'm looking for Elena Ward. She just came in. Labor and delivery. The nurse checked her computer with maddening slowness. 4th floor, but visiting hours don't start until... I'm the father. Her expression shifted slightly. Elevators are that way. Adrian took the stairs, burst onto the 4th floor, and found another nurse's station. A different nurse, younger, looked up with more sympathy. Elena Ward? Room 412. Are you Adrian? Yeah. She's been asking for you. Go ahead. Adrian walked down the hallway, passing rooms where women labored and babies cried and life happened in messy, beautiful chaos. He found 412, knocked once, and pushed the door open. Elena was in the hospital bed, still in her own clothes, monitors strapped to her belly, looking pale and scared and very young. Her neighbor, a woman in her 60s Adrian had never met, sat in the corner chair. You came, Elena said, and the relief in her voice was palpable. Of course I came. Adrian crossed to the bed. How are you doing? Terrified. The contractions aren't bad yet, but the doctor says it could be hours. Then I'll be here for hours. Elena's neighbor stood. I'll give you two some privacy. Elena, call if you need anything. Thank you, Margaret. The woman left, and Adrian pulled the chair closer to the bed, sat down. Elena reached for his hand, gripped it hard. I didn't think you'd come this fast, she said. Where else would I be? Home, asleep, living your normal life. This is my normal life now. Adrian squeezed her hand. You and me and whatever chaos we're walking into. Elena laughed, a shaky sound. Chaos is right. A contraction hit, and her grip tightened until Adrian's fingers went numb. She breathed through it the way they'd practiced in the birthing class she'd insisted they both attend. And when it passed, she slumped back against the pillows. That was a small one, she said. The nurse said they'll get worse. Probably. Very reassuring, Adrian. I'm not here to lie to you. No, you never do you? She studied his face. Are you scared? Yes. Good. I'd be worried if you weren't. They sat in silence for a while, just breathing together, waiting for the next wave. Outside the window, the sky was still dark, stars fading as dawn crept closer. I keep thinking about my mom, Elena said quietly, about how she did this alone, how angry she must have been. You're not alone. I know, but I wonder if she was this scared, if she looked at me when I was born and felt nothing but resentment. Elena, I'm terrified I'm going to feel that way, that I'm going to look at our daughter and only see how she ruined everything. Adrian stood, leaned over the bed rail so he could look her in the eye. You won't, because you're not your mother, and this baby didn't ruin anything. She just changed it. Into what? I don't know yet, but something better than what we had before. Elena's eyes filled with tears. How can you be sure? Because I've already seen it happen. With Mia, with us. We started as strangers making a mistake, and now, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Now we're something else, something that matters. What are we, Adrian? It was the question she'd been asking in different ways for months. And finally, standing in a hospital room at 3 a.m. with the woman about to have his child, Adrian had an answer. We're family, he said. Maybe not the traditional kind, but family anyway. Elena's tears spilled over. I'm going to hold you to that. Please do. Another contraction came, harder this time. Elena gripped the bed rail with one hand and Adrian's hand with the other, breathing through it like she was fighting a war. When it passed, the nurse came in to check her progress. 4 centimeters, the nurse announced. You've got a way to go still. Try to rest between contractions. Rest. As if that was possible. The hours crawled by. Contractions came and went, each one stronger than the last. Elena cycled through ice chips and breathing techniques, and at one point, a string of profanity that would have impressed a sailor. Adrian stayed beside her through all of it, letting her squeeze his hand until he lost feeling, murmuring encouragement that probably didn't help, but at least gave her something to focus on. At 6 a.m., his phone buzzed. Diane. Mia's awake. She knows where you are. Wants to talk to you. Adrian stepped into the hallway, called home. Mia answered immediately. Dad? Hey, kiddo. Is the baby coming? Yeah, but it's going to be a while still. Is Elena okay? She's tough. She's doing great. Mia was quiet for a moment. I made something for the baby. Can you bring it to the hospital? Adrian felt his throat tighten. What did you make? A bracelet with beads. Mom helped me. It's for her. For my sister. Mia's voice went smaller. So she knows I don't hate her. I'll come get it. Give me 20 minutes. He told Elena he'd be right back, drove home in the early morning light, and found Mia and Diane in the kitchen. Mia handed him a small bracelet made of colorful plastic beads, the kind kids made at summer camp. It's not fancy, Mia said, but I picked the colors carefully. Yellow for happy and purple for brave and green for growth. That's what the internet said. Adrian crouched down to her level. It's perfect. She's gonna love it. Can I come to the hospital to meet her? Not yet, but soon. As soon as she's born and everyone's settled. Mia nodded, trying to be brave. Tell Elena I said good luck. I will. He drove back to the hospital with the bracelet in his pocket, feeling the weight of it like a promise. When he got back to the room, Elena was in the middle of another contraction, and the nurse was checking monitors. 8 centimeters, the nurse said. Almost there. Almost turned out to be another 3 hours. 3 hours of Elena's pain escalating, of doctors coming and going, of decisions about epidurals and positions and pushing. Adrian stayed through all of it because he'd promised, because he couldn't imagine being anywhere else. At 10:23 a.m., after one final tremendous push, their daughter was born. The room erupted in motion, nurses cleaning, doctors checking, monitors beeping. But all Adrian could see was the tiny, red-faced, screaming creature they placed on Elena's chest. So small, so impossibly, perfectly real. She's here, Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. She's actually here. Adrian reached out, touched one tiny fist, and felt something inside him crack open. Not break. Open. Like a door he hadn't known was locked. She's perfect, he managed. She's ours. The nurse took the baby to clean her up, weigh her, do all the medical things that needed doing. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 20 inches long, healthy and screaming and furious at the world she'd just entered. When they brought her back, swaddled in a hospital blanket, Adrian held her for the first time. She fit in his arms like she'd always belonged there, her face scrunched and red, her tiny fingers curled into fists. "Hi," he whispered. "I'm your dad, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to try my best." The baby stopped crying, opened her eyes, and looked at him. Really looked, like she was trying to figure out who this person was who kept talking to her. "She knows your voice," Elena said from the bed, exhausted and radiant. "She's been hearing it for months." Adrian couldn't speak. He just stood there, holding his daughter, feeling the full weight of what they'd done. Not the mistake of how she'd been conceived, but the choice of what they'd built after. The decision to show up, to try, to become something neither of them had planned but both of them needed. "We need a name," Elena said. Mia made her a bracelet. Adrian pulled it from his pocket, showed Elena. Yellow for happy, purple for brave, green for growth. Elena smiled. "Those are good things to be." "Yeah." They sat in silence for a while, passing the baby back and forth, learning the feel of her. Finally, Elena said, "What about Sophie?" "Sophie?" Adrian tested the name. "Sophie Blake Ward." "Or just Sophie Blake. She's your daughter, too." "She's our daughter." Adrian looked at Elena, at this woman who'd gone from stranger to co-parent to something he still didn't have words for. "What are we going to tell people? About us?" "The truth. That we're raising a child together. That we're figuring it out as we go." "That's it?" "That's enough." Elena reached for his hand. "Adrian, I know this isn't what either of us planned, but I'm glad it's you. I'm glad we're doing this together." "Me too." The door burst open and a nurse poked her head in. "You have some visitors? A little girl and her mother?" Adrian's heart jumped. "Send them in." Diane entered first, followed by Mia, who looked nervous and excited and scared all at once. She stopped just inside the door, staring at the bundle in Adrian's arms. "Is that her?" Mia whispered. "Yeah? Come meet your sister." Mia walked over slowly, like she was approaching something fragile. Adrian knelt down so she could see better. "This is Sophie," he said. "Sophie, this is your big sister, Mia." Mia stared at the baby, reached out one careful finger to touch her hand. Sophie's tiny fist opened, closed around Mia's finger, and held on. "She's so small," Mia breathed. "You were this small once?" "Really? Really?" Mia looked up at Elena, who was watching from the bed with tears in her eyes. "Can I give her the bracelet?" "Of course." Mia carefully fastened the beaded bracelet around Sophie's tiny wrist, where it hung loose but bright. "There. Now she knows I'm her sister, and that I'm going to take care of her." "She's lucky to have you," Elena said. Mia straightened up, trying to look grown up. "I'm going to teach her everything. How to ride a bike and how to build Lego dinosaurs and how to make Dad laugh when he's being too serious." "That's a lot of responsibility," Adrian said. "I can handle it." Mia looked at the baby again, something fierce and protective crossing her face. "She's mine too, right?" "Right." They spent the next hour in that hospital room, the 5 of them, Adrian and Elena, Diane and Mia and Sophie, figuring out how to be whatever kind of family they were becoming. It wasn't traditional. It wasn't what anyone had planned, but it was theirs. Later, after Diane took Mia home with promises to come back tomorrow, after the nurses dimmed the lights and Elena fell into exhausted sleep, Adrian sat in the chair beside the hospital bassinet and watched Sophie sleep. She looked like Elena, same nose, same mouth, but she had his stubborn chin, the same one Mia had. 2 daughters. One life he'd planned, one he hadn't, both equally precious. His phone buzzed quietly. A text from Rebecca Chen, the lawyer. "Heard the news. Congratulations." Also, Carter and Lee settled the defamation claim. Full apology, clean record, compensation for legal fees. You won. Adrian stared at the message. They'd filed the claim 2 months ago, more as a deterrent than anything else. He'd honestly forgotten about it in the chaos of preparing for Sophie. But they'd won. Not just survived. Won. He texted back, "Thank you for everything. Rebecca. Thank you for being the kind of clients who fight back. Most people just fold. You didn't." Adrian looked at Elena, sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. At Sophie, tiny and perfect in her bassinet. At the life they'd somehow managed to build out of chaos and fear and a single night that had changed everything. They hadn't folded. They'd faced it. Together. The next few days blurred together in a haze of feedings and diaper changes and visitors. Diane brought Mia every afternoon, and slowly, Mia's initial wariness transformed into fierce protectiveness. She appointed herself Sophie's official big sister, insisted on helping with everything, and threatened bodily harm to anyone who looked at the baby wrong. "She's intense," Elena observed, watching Mia lecture a nurse about proper swaddling technique. "She's your sister-in-law. Get used to it." Elena laughed. "Is that what Mia is? My sister-in-law? I don't know what the technical term is for your co-parent's daughter from a previous relationship, but sure, sister-in-law works." They took Sophie home on day 3 to Adrian's apartment where the nursery was ready and waiting. Elena stayed the first night sleeping on the couch because she was too nervous to leave the baby. The second night, too. By the third night, it felt normal having her there. "I should probably go back to my place," Elena said on the 4th morning, but she didn't move from the rocking chair where she was feeding Sophie. "Why?" Adrian asked. "Because this is your space, and we agreed. Separate places, shared custody. We agreed to a lot of things before she was born. Maybe we should renegotiate." Elena looked up sharply. "What are you saying?" Adrian sat down on the floor beside the rocking chair, watching Sophie's tiny mouth work. "I'm saying this is working. You being here, all of us together. And maybe we should stop pretending we're going to go back to separate lives when neither of us wants that. You don't know what I want, don't I?" Adrian met her eyes. "Elena, you've been here 4 days. You haven't once mentioned going home. You've arranged your stuff in the bathroom. You color-coded the baby supplies. You're nesting. I'm not nesting. You organized the diaper drawer by size and type. That's just practical. That's nesting." Adrian reached up, touched Sophie's tiny hand. "Stay. Not as a guest. Not as a temporary solution. Just stay." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Adrian, I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not even asking you to love me. I'm just asking you to be here. With Sophie, with Mia, with me. As a family. What if it doesn't work? Then we figure it out. Same as everything else." Elena looked down at Sophie, at this tiny human they'd created, then back at Adrian. "What about Mia? Does she get a say?" "I already asked her." "You did?" "Last night, after you fell asleep. I asked if she'd be okay with Elena and Sophie staying here. You know what she said?" "What?" "She said it made sense, that families should live together, and that someone needed to make sure you didn't organize everything in the house." Elena laughed through her tears. "She said that?" "Word for word. I don't organize everything. Elena, you alphabetized my spice rack. It was chaos before. It was fine. It was alphabetical chaos, which is the worst kind." Elena shifted Sophie to her shoulder, patting her back gently. "If I stay, and I'm not saying I am, but if I did, what would that look like? Messy, complicated. Probably fights about whose turn it is to do laundry, Mia practicing her dinosaur roars at 6 in the morning, Sophie crying at 3. Both of us exhausted and confused and trying to figure out how to be parents to 2 kids. That sounds terrible. It does, doesn't it? But also kind of wonderful." "Yeah." Adrian stood, held out his hand. "So stay, please." Elena looked at his hand for a long moment. Then she shifted Sophie to one arm and took it. "Okay, I'll stay, but only because someone needs to keep your calendar color-coded." "I knew you'd see reason." They stood there in the nursery, holding hands, holding their daughter, and Adrian felt something settle into place. Not perfect, not the ending he'd imagined when this all started, but real and solid and worth everything they'd fought for. 6 months later, Sophie was sitting up on her own, grabbing everything within reach, and expressing her opinions loudly about vegetables. Mia had started 3rd grade and appointed herself Sophie's personal bodyguard, threatening to beat up anyone who made her sister cry. "She's going to be a terror when she's older," Diane observed one Sunday afternoon, watching Mia demonstrate proper fort-building techniques to an unimpressed 6-month-old. "She already is a terror," Adrian said, but he was smiling. "Takes after her father. I was never a terror." "Adrian, you once made a spreadsheet ranking your 2nd grade classmates by lunchtime efficiency. That was research for a project." "You were 7. Elena emerged from the kitchen with coffee, handed one to Diane, kept one for herself. "What are we discussing?" "Adrian's childhood reign of terror." "Oh, I want to hear this." Elena settled onto the couch beside Adrian, close enough that their shoulders touched. It had become natural over the months, these small touches. The casual intimacy of people who'd chosen each other, not because of passion or romance, but because of something quieter and more lasting. "There's nothing to hear," Adrian protested. "I was a perfectly normal child." "Who color-coded his homework?" Diane added. "Organization is not a crime." "It is when you're 7. They bickered good-naturedly while Mia built her fort and Sophie attempted to eat a wooden block. Normal family chaos. The kind Adrian had never thought he'd have again after the divorce. That night after Diane left and Mia was in bed and Sophie was finally, mercifully asleep, Adrian and Elena collapsed on the couch. "I'm exhausted," Elena said. "Same. But it's a good exhausted." "Is there such a thing?" "There is now." Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never thanked you." "For what?" "For not running, for staying, for building this with me." Adrian wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "You don't have to thank me for that." "Yes, I do, because you could have left a dozen times. When HR came after us, when Mia was struggling, when things got hard. But you didn't. Neither did you. We're stubborn like that." "Yeah, we are." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the baby monitor where Sophie slept peacefully, listening to the quiet sounds of their home. Their home. Somewhere along the way it had stopped being his apartment and become theirs. "Adrian?" Elena said quietly. "Yeah? I think I'm falling in love with you." He went very still. "You think?" "Okay, I know. I'm falling in love with you. Maybe already have fallen. I don't know exactly when it happened, but somewhere between the hospital and the midnight feedings and you fixing the crib at 2 in the morning, she trailed off. Is that okay?" Adrian turned to look at her, this brilliant, fierce, impossible woman who'd crashed into his life and changed everything. "Yeah, that's okay. Just okay. Better than okay." He kissed her forehead, soft and careful. "Because I'm falling in love with you too. Have been for a while. I was just waiting for the right time to say it." "This is the right time?" "We're sitting on a couch covered in spit-up stains. We haven't slept in 6 months, and our lives are complete chaos. Yeah, this is the perfect time." Elena laughed, tilted her face up to his, and kissed him properly. Not the desperate kiss from that night 6 months ago. Something gentler, more certain. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. "So what now?" "Now we keep doing what we're doing, raising our girls, figuring it out as we go." "That's it? That's the plan?" "That's the plan." Adrian pulled her closer. "Unless you want me to make a spreadsheet about it." "Absolutely not." "Color-coded calendar?" "I will divorce you before we're even married." "Can't divorce someone you're not married to." "Then I'll think of something worse." But Elena was smiling as she said it, and Adrian knew they were going to be fine. Better than fine. They'd started as a mistake, one night, one choice, one consequence that had threatened to destroy everything. But they'd turned it into something neither of them had expected. Not just a co-parenting arrangement, not just a friendship, but a real family, built on trust and stubbornness and the shared refusal to give up when things got hard. Upstairs, Sophie started crying. They both stood, moved toward the nursery together, a synchronized dance they'd perfected over months of practice. "My turn," Elena said. "We'll both go?" They stood over the crib, looking down at their daughter, who stopped crying the moment she saw them. Her tiny face broke into a gummy smile, and she reached up with both hands. "She's going to be spoiled," Elena said. "Absolutely." Adrian picked Sophie up, held her close, and brilliant and fierce and stubborn, just like her mother. And organized and loyal and impossibly good, just like her father. They looked at each other over Sophie's head, and Adrian felt it again, that sense of everything clicking into place. Not perfect, not what anyone had planned, but exactly what they needed. Mia appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Is Sophie okay?" "She's fine, just wanted to say hi." "Can I hold her?" "Come on." Mia climbed onto the rocking chair, and Adrian carefully placed Sophie in her arms, staying close to spot her. Elena sat on the arm of the chair, one hand on Mia's shoulder. "We're a weird family," Mia announced. "Very weird," Adrian agreed. "But that's okay. Weird is better than boring." "Where'd you learn that?" "From you. You said weird is just another word for special." "Did I say that?" "Last week, when I was worried about being different from the other kids." Mia looked down at Sophie, who was grabbing at her fingers. "I think we're special weird. The good kind." "The best kind," Elena said softly. They stayed like that for a long time, the four of them in the nursery, bathed in the soft glow of the nightlight, being a family in all their messy, complicated, beautiful reality. And Adrian thought about how far they'd come. From that moment in the stairwell when Elena had told him about the pregnancy and his world had tilted, through the investigation and the fear and the hospital room where Sophie had been born, to this, standing in their home with their daughters, building a life that made sense not because it was planned, but because they'd chosen it. Every day, over and over, they'd chosen this. It wasn't the story he'd expected to tell, but it was the story he'd been given, and he wouldn't trade it for anything. "Bedtime," Elena said eventually. "All of us." They tucked both girls in, Sophie in her crib, Mia in her room with the blue walls, and then collapsed into their own bed, exhausted and content. "Same time tomorrow?" Adrian asked. "And the day after that? And the day after that?" Elena reached for his hand in the dark. "For as long as you'll have me." "That's going to be a really long time." "Good. I'm not going anywhere." Neither was he. They'd found each other in the chaos, built something real from the wreckage of a mistake, and turned it into the kind of love that lasted. Not because it was easy, but because they'd chosen to stay, to fight, to believe in something neither of them had planned, but both of them needed. And that, Adrian thought as he drifted off to sleep, was worth everything.